not. Meteorologist Scott Mundt from the digital desk as we continue to follow our weather for today. And I think the main headline is the strong wind. We'll have very strong winds, becoming very strong as we go through the day today, starting across western South Dakota, eventually moving into central and eastern KELOLAND. In fact, these wind gusts will be 60 miles per hour and more. We'll look at numerous chances we have at seeing precipitation. That will last into at least the first half of this coming weekend. And then as we get into next week, temperatures are expected to slowly warm. And speaking of warm temperatures, we'll go through that for today's. You see this warm front draped across eastern KELOLAND this morning. That's a look at things at 10 o'clock. Very warm air expected, well above average. We are forecasting 40 for a high temperature in Sioux Falls, and yes, those are rain showers, but I should mention, too, they can start in the form of a wintry mix, including maybe periods of freezing rain or freezing drizzle in northeastern South Dakota. This is at noon today. Temperatures in the 30s to near 40 in eastern, southeastern KELOLAND. That, again, is rain. And then we'll watch this front move through. The timing of this front will be watched closely. Right now, it will be late afternoon, early evening, so maybe around the 6 o'clock hour. You could have a couple of those wind gusts approach 40 miles per hour. It's around midnight, and we'll get to those winds here in just a bit, but it's around midnight that southeastern KELOLAND could have some of the strongest winds as they do approach 60, maybe even 70 miles per hour for some. This is at midday. Now, you do notice western South Dakota, especially into the hills, they're already seeing wind gusts of 60 miles per hour. As we continue into the afternoon, you see how a lot of this is setting up across western South Dakota with these strong winds gusting of 50 miles per hour or more, or shall I say, and more, as we'll have a couple of those areas coming at over 60. And then it's over 60 in the north central South Dakota, just in time for this evening. Shortly after sunset, we'll see those wind gusts approach 60 miles per hour in north central South Dakota. And by 9 o'clock this evening, look how widespread these wind gusts are of 50 miles per hour and more. That covers much of central eastern South Dakota. Notice it's getting into west central Minnesota. In fact, let me go ahead and circle Lake Benton. That one stands out at 72 miles per hour. As we continue to the midnight hour, we'll see some of these wind gusts approach 60 miles per hour and more in the southeastern KELOLAND. It's saying 59 in Sioux Falls at midnight, 65 in Parker, 65 in Beersford. And I know earlier the model run an hour prior to this one was even putting a 70-mile-per-hour gust in Parker. So be prepared for those very strong winds. For today, we'll have temperatures well above average. We're looking at rain showers for many, especially in the eastern South Dakota, where the chances there are greater than 50% for east central to northeastern KELOLAND. Well, that high of 40 today in Sioux Falls, 45 in Yankton, 54 in Pierre, and close to 60 in western South Dakota. There will be a couple of areas that may hit 60 in western South Dakota and south central South Dakota. And then for tonight, with these strong northwest winds, wind gusts over 60 miles per hour, in comes the cold air, temperatures falling to the teens and 20s. And then for tomorrow, don't expect those numbers to change much. Sure, they may go up a couple of degrees here and there. Otherwise, expect steadier falling temperatures during the day. Coming up in the next segment, we'll continue to talk about this strong wind and be joined by meteorologist Brian Karstens. Stay with us. You're watching Weather or Not. Well, Brian, I got rid of the music and I'm going with this wind sound effect just to continue to get this point across about our strong wind.
Yep, and I think that's the sound we're going to be hearing tonight. Most of us, even this afternoon already for western South Dakota, a large, pretty decent-sized clipper system moving in. What we call a Saskatchewan screamer.
Because the winds will be screaming, too.
And it's not exactly out of Alberta either. It's actually a little farther east, so that's why the name applies.
And so, which, the main precip with this is a little bit farther north.
Right,
you're looking at, the wintry mix, the snow, that's a little farther north. We have rain in our forecast today.
Isn't that something? After all the cold air, then you get rain back. We've had freezing rain in the Northeast.
Okay, and with this wind coming, I know you mentioned yesterday you were going to make some rounds around the house and think about those Christmas decorations that you have outside. Did you do anything with those? I did not do anything with mine.
I have the step ladder ready to go.
Okay.
What we have in our yard is on the flagpole in the front, we've got a star that is lit up.
Okay.
And I hang it from the top of the pole, and it's up there, probably 15 feet. Not a lot, but that decoration is kind of old, and it wouldn't take a lot for that plastic to rip.
Yeah.
And I don't want that, so we're going to take that down today.
Okay.
That'll be a 5-minute job. And then, the reindeer, we've got a couple of reindeer. I'm going to let those, they'll just sit there and do their thing. And then maybe the little Christmas tree that's in the middle of the decoration. We have a white Christmas tree that's about 6 or 8 feet tall, and it's held down. I've got some stakes on there, but I'm a little bit concerned.
But you also have it with 8-10 inches of snow that's around it too?
Correct. Well, that's as of early part of today. We'll see what's left by this evening with this warming wind. We've been talking all about that. It's a very complicated forecast because it's not a shoo-in that all of this is going to be airborne. In fact, I would argue the opposite. There's going to be a considerable amount of melting today. And, of course, you're starting with the wind headlines where it's just wind, basically the biggest story, Pierre and Rapid City, 50 to 60 mile-an-hour winds, pretty likely.
But notice we're missing that chunk in eastern and southeastern KELOLAND from Huron over to Marshall, areas to the south. That is covered right now as of earlier this morning with a winter storm watch due to blizzard conditions possible. That's how we described it this morning. Mm-hmm. So as you mentioned, too, and it's a very interesting day. How warm do we get? Forecasting a high of 40. Sioux Falls has 7 inches of snow on the ground, officially. What happens with that snow is we warm these temperatures above freezing. Hopefully by midday we'll get above freezing. Mm-hmm. We can also see some rain showers by then, too. So that's why hopefully by midday we're above freezing if these showers come in a little earlier. If we're below freezing, then we have a problem with freezing rain. We don't need that.
Right, and that's why the Northeast has been flagged for that, because it's a little bit of a slower delay. But yeah, you're right. It's an interesting. It's a race against time, because here, as we're watching, and maybe you're watching this program this afternoon, it airs at various times during the day. But the bottom line is we've got about an 8 to 10 hour window of some pretty decent melting in Sioux Falls and the surrounding area, and then once that window closes, then the temperature falls. The wind is still very strong overnight. There probably will be some embedded snow that'll whip around the backside of the low. I think Sisseton and Watertown, there could be a blizzard warning that comes out tonight for that Northeast. And boy, you've got your hand right on the right button there, Scott.
We think
you
alike.
knew what I was going to say, and that visibility. Yeah, that's exactly right. Summit. What do you bet Summit will have? Blizzard weather tonight?
What's that? The coffee cup?
Yep.
Yeah,
right at the exit.
there. And we've talked to them on the news before.
Yeah,
asking how the weather conditions are.
Just classic. Yeah, they get this a lot. But even Lake Benton is showing up on there, the Buffalo Ridge. Mm-hmm. I just showed a little bit ago, too, in one of our morning broadcast hits here, that the Pipestone area, the latest wind gust is at 72.
That 70 mile per hour gust, that's been dancing around. It seems like. I know during the newscast, when the latest HER data came in, it suggested 70 in Parker.
Yep.
And I think it suggested 70, so I can't remember where, but you said, what, 72 in Pipestone?
Yeah, and what it's doing...
So somewhere... Go ahead and explain. Well, I know where you're going.
Essentially what happens is the model is trying to link up any snowfall, any snow squall, or a little filament that'll come in as a little fine line of blue. And whenever the model, every hour that processes, so it changes, and then it'll spit out those ridiculously high wind numbers, which, on the first surface of that, you think, is that really going to be the case? But hey, you got to look back at the history of these kind of clippers. And when the pressure gradient, the barometric pressure within that low through Fargo drops like a rock, and then you get that pressure difference here between the high and the low, the high to the west, too. That's quickly moving in. So it's a big, tight gradient, and that's what funnels all that wind. And there's exactly what you're talking about. See those little blue line, Pipestone, Madison, and that can give you a really howling wind for just a few minutes.
Yeah, so and that's at midnight, and that's what we've been mentioning too. Around the midnight hour, we could have some of our strongest wind gusts. And recently, over the past couple of hours, when the new data continues to come in, it's been suggesting these wind gusts around 70.
Yeah, and that's momentum transfer. That's out of the base of the cloud. Boy, yeah, you get a snow squall and you can get that kind of forcing there. But some of our traditional products, there's one little thing that I usually use on a day like today. My brother Chris, years ago, built a little buff kit profile at the Iowa State. In fact, Iowa State actually still produces that product, and it goes out on a couple of websites. And so I dial into that for the momentum transfer product. And for Sioux Falls, like the Minnehaha, Lincoln County area, it's been consistently popping at 70. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to get necessarily 70 mile-an-hour winds, but we've got the potential somewhere in our region to get to that maximum number. And that's what I use that product for on that.
And like we said, it's been jumping around too.
Mm-hmm.
One time it shows Parker, the other time it shows Pipestone. I mean, it could show up in Madison, it can show up, in Canton.
Yep.
But somewhere in the area, somebody will probably get maybe around 70 miles per hour for this wind gust.
So
around midnight.
And just think of that, if it knocks the power out, could have some scattered power outages, possible. It's going to get cold after midnight, so the furnace won't be necessarily kicking on if you do lose power. So I'm not saying to get really worried about that, but I'm just kind of throwing it out there. I wouldn't be too surprised
These things
if we
happen.
have a few power outages, at least a scattered power outage possibility. So keep that in mind.
Here's another model run at midnight tonight, and it continues to show the areas in the northeastern South Dakota, Brian, with those reduced visibilities. Not as bad as, say, the GFS, but it still shows, some of the worst visibility found across northeastern South Dakota. As we look at the HER model data here, it brings in some of the reduced visibilities around midnight again, northeastern South Dakota. And, of course, that streak that we have showing up just to the east of Sioux Falls, that's probably maybe a snow band there that's trying to develop to help bring down these visibilities. And I think I have one more model. This is the European model. As we go through the evening hours and into tonight, a lot of the times it's been showing up around midnight to bring in these reduced visibilities. And it is showing that in northeastern South Dakota, not as low as what the GFS model was showing you, that initial model that I showed everybody, but it's still bringing in visibilities around 3 miles northeastern South Dakota. It's around 6 in Sioux Falls. So, yeah, we know that we will have reduced visibilities as these winds do pick up in eastern and southeastern KELOLAND. We mentioned some of those wind speeds coming in around 60, 70 miles per hour. And this is just, this will be the latest in this family of clippers, Brian, that you mentioned. You showed this on air in KELOLAND this morning. And it will just continue these numerous chances we have at precipitation. I was looking at things this morning, putting things together in my notebook. And when we get into the extended forecast, the 7 days, it still had temperatures in the 40s in southwestern South Dakota, while I think we were struggling in the single digits, maybe teens across the Northeast. And it's that difference in those temperatures that these systems are just riding.
Yeah. And as long as that alignment is there, we're going to continue to get clippers of different types. There's a variety of outcomes with each one of these. So it's enough weather to keep you on your toes, because not only is it going to snow again starting Wednesday in western South Dakota, there's a chance that could spill over into eastern KELOLAND on Thursday. Then we regroup and we get another one that moves in on Saturday.
Which could be how many weeks in a row?
3 weeks in a row of Sioux Falls snow. Now, first thing off the bat on Saturday, though, the temperature forecast, and I know we're going to talk more about that coming up, but it's going to be significantly colder. So the ability to hold heavy snow in theory, should be a better outcome. But it's also amazing to me to see how efficient some of these systems have been.
Right.
So I'm not going to necessarily sweep that under the rug, because we could get enough snow to coat the ground and get some snow during the day on Saturday.
And we'll talk more about our numerous chances of precipitation going through at least the first half of the weekend. That's coming up next. You're watching Weather or Not. most out of that sound effect of the wind.
Yeah, boy, a lot of that. We've been talking too, just, I know behind the scenes we were reflecting on Saturday in Sioux Falls in the snow. And as it was coming down, it was very heavy. But boy, we were sure very fortunate to have little or no wind, essentially, with that.
Well, we were getting an inch of snow per hour.
Yeah, really a lot of snow. And for an Alberta clipper or clipper type system, that was about as efficient as you could get. Although the heaviest band, based on the surface low track, right over Sioux Falls and then diagonally, it kind of was that diagonal line that came in from the northwest. And so now we get to watch, how the next ones come out of the northwest. It's a family of clippers, and each one will have a various difference, and that's just the way it's going to be. So we'll take them one at a time.
Right. So, and this is all lining up with our difference between our temperatures. We talked about that as I looked at things this morning. Warmer across southwestern South Dakota as compared to northeastern KELOLAND, and more or less these systems just like to ride that temperature difference, and that's what we'll have. You mentioned something coming in tomorrow, Thursday. Saturdays almost looks a little bit more widespread on this latest run trying to come in, but look at where we do have some of the darker blues. Now we're looking at the precipitation blues here, not the temperature blues, and you can see the darker blue coming in southeastern South Dakota. Lo and behold, northwestern Iowa, almost the same thing as what we had last weekend, and what you just talked about with that heavier snow around Sioux Falls and taking that diagonal into northwestern Iowa. So that's Saturdays. And then the thing that I also looked at, Brian, is after getting this precipitation, the snow that moves in on Saturday, what happens? Well, we're cold on Sunday, and then we slowly warm, trying to get back above average. I'll describe it again as melting temperatures, getting back to these melting temperatures by midweek of next week. And then how long does that last? Well, we hit the button again. Look what happens as we get into next weekend. Went ahead and stopped it here on Sunday, still showing well above average temperatures, both Saturday and Sunday. I don't see any snow there. We'll see if that holds. Otherwise, that'll be week 4 of getting snow on a Saturday or a weekend. And then as we hit the button again, it's trying to bring something in around the 23rd. That's probably connected to, notice how the things are trying to dive here in the southwestern United States, so we might be able to get a system to ride as that trough develops. But that's a good 2 weeks out. This is the last frame of the animation, so that's a good 2 weeks out. We'll see how much of that holds true. But I'm really interested to see how much of this warm air returns and how long it lasts. As you mentioned this too, Brian, during one of our meetings, our newsroom meetings, are you overly sold on having a white Christmas?
It is not a guarantee.
No.
It is not. And I know that's a hard thing to think about when you look outside today and you're like, well, there's lots of snow. Surely it's going to be around. But you talk about that kind of warmth for that long of a period of time before Christmas. And I've already forewarned my kids. I said, look, we'll see. There's always time to redeem things toward the end, but there's going to be a segment of time where we're going to string together some milder days. And any day that gets a little windy, it gets, there's a lot of variables still to play out on exactly how fast. But even look at today's forecast with 40-degree weather and trying to take out some of the snow in just one day. We could easily see days next week, like you said. Timing is something that we'll continue to watch. But the volatility of this pattern is interesting because not only do you have the very mild Pacific air, but the very cold polar air, cross-polar, it's coming in out of Siberia, parking over Canada. And the temperature difference between those two air masses, you're looking at, 60 degrees on one side of that, or warmer, and you've got provinces in Canada where it's 20 or 30 below zero.
Well below.
So there you go. That's the mathematical dilemma, modeling, trying to handle all of those things.
And I don't think that the warming is going to come in as we get into, beginning of next week. And I'm talking the work week, Monday. I think it's as we go through next week, it should gradually get warmer.
Yep, yeah.
And then we'll see what happens as we hit, beyond Wednesday. Wednesday's the day that I just showed you that, temperatures will be above average. So then, numbers probably at least in the middle 30s, we'll say.
Yep. It makes a difference, though, because if you can reset winter a little bit, you get these warm-ups. See, then the snow that's on the ground, it melts, or you kind of hit the reset button, Maybe the snow drifts go down in the ditch. That's a big deal for me watching
Yes,
that.
it is.
But yeah,
Even tonight.
And tonight, absolutely, because none of us want to drive through big drifts in the overnight. So again, circling back around, our big story of the day is obviously the blizzard possibilities for tonight. We'll keep you posted.
And we'll continue to watch any new snow that moves in with the family of clippers. This is an outlook that takes us through the first half of the weekend, and we've been mentioning these chances for precipitation lasting that long. And then what happens after that? That's a big question. Now, there's that trough giving us that area of snow here, and you see that tail extending from southern KELOLAND. That could be as that trough develops to our southwest, and then that's going out to day 14. So after this weekend, I think we get more into maybe a zonal flow, trying to be underneath that ridge in the atmosphere across the western, southwestern United States, help bring in these warmer temperatures. That I was looking at some information suggesting that this may be it for a while. Dare I say that, to get, once these clippers do run through, we'll bring in these warming temperatures as we go through next week, that our precipitation chances may end up going down as we go over the next, we'll say, week, maybe even longer, when you look beyond what's expected for this weekend. Coming up next, we will talk a little bit more about those warmer temperatures next week. Stay with us. You're watching Weather or Not. Welcome back to Weather or Not. Okay, that's enough out of the wind. Brian, we are looking at warmer temperatures next week, but something we really haven't talked about, the cold air that's coming this weekend. And it's important, too.
It is. The potential is there. In fact, we really believe the coldest air of the season is going to arrive, and it's going to be accompanied by that chance of snow Saturday, but also can we even hit zero, Scott, in the Northeast?
Right. Looks like temperatures right now, either Saturday, Sunday, we may see highs that do remain below zero. And the numbers that you do see listed for Sioux Falls, those are averages going from yesterday. So it's only 2 days I've thrown in here for what the highest temperature will be, or the warmest temperature for this weekend. It's probably averaging out to the single digits, but let's swing the other way and bring in the following weekend. That's December 20th, 21st, when the above average temperatures do return. And I did the same thing. I looked at a couple of the computer models coming in, and the averages for those numbers are in the lower 40s. So we'll have quite the swing here across KELOLAND as we go over the next couple of weekends. That does it for us for Weather or Not. Thank you for joining us.